So welcome everybody. Absolutely thrilled to have you all back, whether you're watching this live or on Zoom, for the second of a 3-session series on Reclaim Your Health. Each of the sessions is standalone. So if you are here for the first time today, please take a look at our video library to see the other sessions. And we do encourage you, next week it'll be the third and final session, to try and come, because last week was fantastic. So much amazing, helpful information. Our presenters are phenomenal, and I'm just super excited about this. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the virtual mic over to our wonderful speakers, Jen and Christine, and I'm going to let you introduce yourselves again briefly, just in case, because there actually are some new faces here who weren't here last week. So you can let them know who you are and why you are so accomplished at presenting this information. And just a huge thank you to everyone. I'm really excited for the next hour, and looking forward to it.
Yes. Well, Rachel, thank you for having us. Sharon, thank you for making this connection so that we can make this happen for everybody. Um, for those of you who are new this week or watching this replay standalone, my name is Jen Trepic. I'm a health coach and lifestyle coach and host of the podcast Salad with a Side of Fries. I came to all this wellness stuff through my own saga of figuring out my health and my weight. And really, over the years, that all started. I mean, it was a lifetime, but I have been coaching in the space for almost 20 years. And I'm really an insatiable student. So a lot of what we're sharing with you are things that Christine and I have learned over time as we continue to dig deeper into all of these pieces and learn more. So last week was about energy. This week is about mood, and there are certainly crossovers. So it doesn't really matter which order you watch them, but we will encourage everybody to watch both. And before we dive into mood and molecules of emotion, Christine, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, I'm Christine Sotmary. Right now, I'm an acupuncturist and I also do nutrition. I've spent a lifetime looking into alternatives to how to stay healthy, but also the mood piece in acupuncture. The emotions are a really big piece of it. So when you think of the mind-body connection, a lot of that has to do with your stress levels and the different thoughts that you're having, and the way you can sort of figure out how to control some of the, as Jen said, the molecules of emotion. So we'll be going over all that today, like the neurotransmitters and how to eat and how to exercise and how to do some of these things to just put you in a good space. The world is already challenging enough, so if you can like have a leg up in terms of being able to start out the day with kind of a hopeful attitude, that's really, these are tools that can help you do that.
Excellent. So let's start things off. We like to kind of check in with everybody. How are we feeling? Maybe one or two words in the chat. What's our mood today? What emotions are going through us at the moment? And if we didn't say it, we like this to be highly interactive. So keep your chat open. Stay with us. Yeah, awesome. Dusty. Yeah. Stressed. Overwhelmed. Anxious. All right, we got a lot going on, huh? Fed up with censorship of free speech.
Yeah.
Busy, but trying to stay calm. Yes. All right. So let's all take a moment. We're going to shake it out a little, right? So shake the shoulders out. Deep breath. Okay, now often jittery and overwhelmed. So cruddy. I had my COVID and shingles vaccines on Friday. I've been feeling super cruddy since then. Yeah, lots going on for everybody, right? So here's what's really interesting. Differentiating between mood and emotions. So moods tend to be more general, right? There isn't necessarily a specific target, like we heard some people say about something very specific, right? Emotions tend to be specific. We can tie it to something. We're angry about something, or frustrated, or fearful, or right? So the emotions are specific. The mood is more general. And so as we think about this and we keep going forward, practice identifying what's mood and what's emotion in what we're noticing and how things are coming up. Emotions generally are sort of more like a 90-second event, right? We sort of have this wave of emotion versus mood that's more steady and lasting. Christine, anything I'm missing on this one before we?
Well, just if people are interested in Chinese medicine, the mood, which is the untargeted, is much more on the surface. That's more like where your immune system resides. And so it's a general feeling. Say if you're worried, a lot of us wake up worried and you don't even have anything to be worried about specifically. You just have this feeling in your stomach or in your solar plexus. But then if you're worried about a bill coming due, or you're worried about your child getting off to school, or if you're worried about a friend of yours who gave you some news or something, that goes a little deeper. So in Chinese medicine, that would be the blood level. And so the blood is something that holds the emotions. So when you go to acupuncture or Chinese medicine, they look and see what level are we talking about, and then they treat you on that level. So it's kind of a different way of looking at the issues of health and mood.
And part of what is interesting too, I love how you're tying that together, Christine. And I think this then brings it, even more to the forefront. So this is obviously very small. We're going to recommend that everybody Google this. It's the periodic chart of human emotions. And one of the most interesting things, there's also an incredible book called Permission to Feel. If you've never read that book or heard about it, I'm going to recommend it to everybody. One of the biggest challenges that we have is, frankly, the language that we are used to around mood and emotions, that we tend to use the same handful of words that don't necessarily truly accurately describe what we're feeling. So the more words that we can have, the greater lexicon we can pull from, the better we are at understanding and adapting and taking care of ourselves, right? And frankly, taking care of each other, right? With woman to woman. So taking a look and building this language around emotions and mood. So highly recommend this one. And I'm going to move us right along to these molecules of emotion, which really comes down to neurotransmitters and hormones. And a lot of these words we know, right? We know dopamine and adrenaline and serotonin and oxytocin. All of these neurotransmitters and even hormones require nutrients, specifically amino acids. So amino acids are the building blocks of building blocks of protein. They are also the building blocks of neurotransmitters and hormones, among other things for the hormones. So if we are not fueling ourselves well with diverse sources of protein, we're going to see an impact in our mood. And so sometimes I often like to say it's not your fault, right? There's stuff happening around us, and biochemically, we're responding to this soup of nutrients that can help us form these neurotransmitters or not.
Yeah, you want to also make sure, like, so for serotonin and some of the neurotransmitters, you would think that they would be created in your brain. They're actually created in your gut. So making sure that your digestive tract is healthy, that's another thing. And that's another something to focus on in terms of, with chemotherapy and other things that have challenged that, to get some of that back again, is part of the recovery process. And in terms of feeling better and better over time, if you don't know why you are, that sometimes these neurotransmitters are able to function again, and all of a sudden your mood is a little bit better, you feel a little bit more hopeful, you have a better outlook on life, you're solving problems a little better. So you don't want to end up with like adrenaline is like a rush, where you have like too much energy and you're hyper all the time. You want to have a nice, calm amount of energy throughout the day. So that's something we'll talk about later in terms of diet and exercise, to be able to do that. Where you see the minerals down below, the calcium and the potassium, sodium and magnesium, that's all the kind of magnetic exchange that goes on with the neurons. That's how all these molecules are sent from one side of the nerve to the other. And so again, maybe minerals you want to have on board as well, just like you'd have the protein.
Exactly. So by the way, speaking of those minerals, anybody hearing a lot about people taking electrolytes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Electrolytes are minerals. Minerals are electrolytes. So we can get those electrolytes through our food choices, through some supplementation pieces, but we really want to make sure that we're taking quality products to ensure that we're getting the type and quantity of those minerals that really help us. So hydration is about more than just water. Hydration is about those minerals.
Yeah.
So one of the other really powerful things that I like to think about with neurotransmitters is to understand what creates the imbalance, because then it can really offer a lot of insight into what we want to do to repair that neurotransmitter balance, right? So poor dietary food choices. So I love them, but French fries, right? Fried foods, ultra processed foods, these foods that offer calories devoid of nutrients create neurotransmitter imbalance. Overstimulation, right? I mean, we talked about that in some of what you guys shared already. There's so much coming at us from every angle. We often, we're on a Zoom now. We have our phones. We have emails pinging. There is no shortage of sensory information coming at us. By the way, clutter, also sensory overload. So thinking through maybe some of the little things, if we took 3 minutes, set a timer, 3 minutes to just tidy up a couple spaces, what that might do for us in our capacity to focus, to do the things that we need to do, help us feel more in control. Certainly genetics play a factor, but our environment, so not just the processed foods devoid of nutrients and potentially adding toxins, but the air outside, right? Rachel, the dust in your office, the environmental toxins, even, the materials in our home, the couch off-gassing and things like that. It just creates an extra burden on the body that if we're not addressing regularly and supporting our body's own detoxification pathways, which by the way could be a whole other webinar onto itself, right? We can just burden the body and it makes it even more challenging. And Christine, you talked about how a lot of those neurotransmitters, especially like serotonin, we think it's made in the brain, it's actually made in the gut. So any sort of bowel dysfunction or dysregulation or impaired digestion, right? The toxins that we consume, whether in the food or alcohol, all play into all these pieces that create that neurotransmitter imbalance.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add?
Let's not forget stress. Because with stress, you have like just you're leaning on one side of the equation. Now, in this world, it's almost impossible to say, let's eliminate stress. But what they're finding is if you could just take a break, like Jen said, even a 3-minute break, so you've just cleaned up a little corner, take another 3 minutes to be able to just breathe, to be able to put on a YouTube video that's guiding you through, like they call it guided meditation, so that you're guiding through a field with little bunny rabbits and colored birds, and you're just kind of out of your own experience for a little while. They're finding that that's very effective. Like, so the goal is not to reduce stress levels completely, because that's impossible for most of us, but to take these little breaks, especially before you go to sleep at night, because otherwise you can get all wound up and then you have trouble going to sleep. So that would be my advice for that.
For sure. And I think a big piece to remember is that nothing that we're talking about is so fixed or stagnant. It waves like the water. So how we're feeling in this moment, by the time we hang up from this Zoom, hopefully we're feeling something a little bit different, maybe a little more positive. And each moment, it can be fluid. And so recognizing that and allowing for that, I think can be really helpful, so we don't end up feeling stuck in something that we're experiencing. Because if we can allow it, to do the guided meditation or to breathe through it or shake it out like we did at the beginning of the Zoom, we can then keep moving, right? Allow it, that we don't have to stay stuck. And there are solutions, right? So we're going to spend the majority of our time talking about solutions and things that we can use. And before we get into these, I want to mention kind of building this tool belt. So we're going to go through a lot of options. And the idea behind all of the options is that we build this tool belt. And in any given moment, we pull something out. It may or may not work for us in that moment. Okay, no problem. All good. If it's not working for us, pull the next thing out of the tool belt, because what works for us today, right now, may not be the thing that works in an hour or in a week or a month. So the objective is pick something, play with it, see how you feel, pick something else. And so maybe as we're going, I'm a big fan of Post-its. Maybe you write a few of these down on a Post-it and put that Post-it on your computer screen or in your pocket or somewhere where you're going to run into that Post-it. I have one client who will put the Post-it on top of the ice cream container in the freezer, right? We want to put the Post-it where we're going to run into it so that it reminds us of the options. Because one of the things that's really difficult is remembering all of these things in the moment when we're feeling on high alert, super stressed or anxious or frustrated, right? So we can let the Post-it help us. All right, Christine, I'm going to turn it over to you. This is a big one.
Here we go. So these are some of the things that we can do. Just they're like almost like habits of life. So as Jen said, when you're in the middle of a crisis, you're not going to be thinking about these things. But if you've laid a good foundation, for instance, talking to friends. So, if it's not possible for you to leave the house all the time, it's good to, just get on the phone, hear someone else's voice. You can do a Zoom with them, and just make that connection. Because I find in terms of conversation that you start out with all the, how are the kids? How is this? How is the weather? But before you know it, within a half hour, you're talking about really deep, important things that are important to you. So to set some time aside for that is something that, I don't know if all of us do that anymore as much as we'd like. So, you might think about, who are your friends in school? Who are your friends at the church? Who are your friends at the gym? Who are your friends even that you went through therapies with them, that you were in the same room and you got to talking and stuff, that you keep track of each other and see how each other's doing. It's really important. And then the movement we're going to talk about later in terms of different kinds of exercise. So the one thing we know for sure is, couch potatoes, lying around, can become very painful. Like, people don't understand. They think that, like, oh, I'm resting, I'm relaxing, but having no movement in your life can start to become very painful, because our joints need and our muscles need that circulation. And also, as a detox, the lymph system needs to, there's no pump, there's no heart for the lymph system. So we count on movement to get all those toxins out of your body and processed properly. But there is rest and downtime you definitely want. Like, I'm a big napper, and so, maybe a couple of hours after lunch, 20-minute nap. For some people, it's an hour and a half. Everyone's different with this. So for sure, don't base what you're doing on what anyone else says, because if you wake up groggy after an hour nap, you can say, well, maybe let me try 20 minutes. If 20 minutes isn't enough, let me try an hour. So you really have to say, how do I feel, as I'm waking up? You should feel pretty refreshed. Writing and journaling, there are prompts online that, just give you ideas, because I know for some people, a blank page is intimidating, and that it's really hard to, what should I write about each day? But there are prompts, and if you look for writing or journal prompts on the internet, they'll give you an idea of, even just to ask about how your emotions are, or how are your relationships, or how is your physical body doing, how is your spiritual body doing, those kind of things that you can write about. It's definitely been proven to help to kind of get it out of you and onto a piece of paper. And then there's self-reflection, which I'm sure people who don't ever self-reflect, because if they did, they would probably, like, how did I just say that to someone, that they're kind of like a bull in a china shop. So you want to make sure that for yourself, your reasons for doing the things you do, the reasons you're living, the reasons you're finding excitement in life, the reasons you're in love, the reasons that you can put your efforts into something, that all comes from self-reflection. So it's really important. And I think that's something when we get so busy that we neglect quite often. So again, the 3 minutes can make a big difference in terms of just being able to, problem solve and have some ideas of what your path is. And then finally, meditation. Again, I recommend guided visualization. There are people who are really professional at meditation. I think that Elizabeth Gilbert, the Eat, Pray, Love, she started out, she had a good description of it when she went to India, where it was like, could she even sit for like 3 minutes or 15 minutes? And by the time she finished the 4 months in India, she was meditating for 16 hours. So it is something that you can learn how to do. But to me, the first step is to find some music that you can listen to. They have music for meditation. And so just have something external to kind of guide you at first. Just right now, if I said to you, try to empty your mind and not think about anything, and especially don't think of a pink elephant, what are you going to be thinking of? So if I say empty your mind and don't think of anything, all those thoughts come rushing in. If I say think of a blue elephant now, that's the guided visualization. They're telling you kind of what to visualize and how to feel. And it's like a beginner course, so that's how I would stack it up.
Yeah, and I think, I was definitely one of those people who was like, meditate? No, no, no. Think about nothing, not a chance. I need you to distract me to the point that I can't think about other things. So for a long time, movement was my meditation. Until I started working with a meditation coach. So also consider if there are pieces of these that you might want to work on, and find someone who can help in those areas. Because, I mean, frankly, one of my favorite quotes is, those who live at a world-class level learn from other people's experiences to shorten their learning curve. So we can work with coaches and guides to help make all of these things easier and help us really move forward. Now, part of why a lot of these things work is because of the vagus nerve. So give us a 1 in the chat. Have you heard of the vagus nerve? Are we familiar with the vagus nerve? 1 is a yes, 2 is a little bit, 3 is a what now? Right? 3 is not at all. Okay, great. So we've heard of it. Some of us know a lot, some of us know less. Awesome. So the vagus nerve is the literal connection between the gut and the brain. Cranial nerve X. And it really drives our nervous system. It is rest and digest. It is calm, able to think from the front of the brain versus the back of the brain, right? This is what allows us to reclaim our health, our well-being, our equanimity. So one of the things that we want to think about is how I think of the vagus nerve is like a 5-lane highway. 3 of those lanes are going gut to brain. 2 are going brain to gut. So we are not going to outthink the biochemistry of how we are fueling our bodies, because 3 lanes of that communication are going gut to brain, right? And what can happen over time is that essentially that vagus nerve loses what we call tone. So we want to also think about what we can do to tone the vagus nerve, to activate the vagus nerve so that it can help us turn on rest and digest and detoxification. So we can do that with a few tools. Exercise keeps coming up. We're going to dig into that a bit more. Humming, the vibration of the vocal cords, actually stimulates the vagus nerve that's sort of behind those vocal cords. Conscious breathing, part of that meditation and relaxation is this breathing. One of my favorite things, connection. By the way, there was a recent study or article that seeing a friend's face, having a conversation with the friend, is on par in efficacy with some pharmaceuticals, right? So really powerful what happens with connection. Hug somebody, right? I have a chapter in my upcoming book that's called Just Hug a Person, right? Like, can we all just hug someone? The Valsalva maneuver. So, you know, when you're on an airplane and your ears get plugged and you sort of hold your nose and gently breathe out to unclog your ears, that's called the Valsalva maneuver. And that also activates and tones the vagus nerve. And then there's the diving reflex. So this is a little bit of like the ice bucket challenge, but we're going to dip our face in ice cold water and lift it up. Maybe do that a couple times. And that can also stimulate the vagus nerve. Christine, I know you love the vagus nerve. What do you want to add?
Yeah. Just that, if you go back to the slide before this, you can actually see so much of the vagus nerve is in the throat. So singing, humming, all that, that's the reason why that works. And then where the circle is on the right side there, if you kind of scratch the indentation at the base of your skull in the back, they're saying that the vagus nerve going down the back is all about, being wound up and being a little bit hyper and stuff. So if you need to calm down, that's exactly where you would pick up a little kitty cat, or, you would pet them and you can see that they're visually relaxing. We can do that too. So it's like we're our own little kitty cat. So if you just kind of go up and down with your finger there in that indentation in the back of your skull, that will also help the vagus nerve. And then, we talk about the gut all the time, but the vagus nerve also helps the lungs. It also helps the liver, like all these organs, if they're working properly, even the heart, it's because the vagus nerve has that tone and is able to translate all these messages from the brain and then from the gut up to the brain. So that's the reason we're doing all this. Over time, it's almost like one of the easiest, and there's many, many more. Again, if you look online, if you say tonify the vagus nerve, there are lots of, to me, they all feel like fun. And I know for myself, I stumbled on a lot of them without even knowing it. Like when I finish a shower, I know most people don't think of doing this, but I turn on the really cold water and I put my face in it, all scrunched up. Again, it turned out later that, that's that diving reflex so in a way I was self-medicating and didn't even realize it. So there's lots of fun things you can do with the vagus nerve.
All right. So we've talked a lot about the food. So this is one where just consider how our food is playing into the mood that we're creating, right? How do we want to feel? Are we giving ourselves those nutrients to be emotionally well? So think omega-3s, antioxidants, right? All of those amino acids, the building blocks of the neurotransmitters. And eliminating or minimizing these foods that are stimulants, the foods that create mood swings like sugar, right? Our blood sugar and our mood are very much tied together. So if we're seeing, we go from hyper to hangry, right? That's definitely connected to blood sugar. And simple swaps can make a huge impact there. So this is one that you might want to screenshot.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one too, tell me when we're ready. We good? I'll go to the next one. Some of our favorite mood boosting foods. So overall, what we see in this is color. So the different colors give us an indication of the different antioxidants and nutrients that are in the foods. So we can help our body simply by focusing on eating the rainbow, right? Again, those amino acids, the minerals for the electrolytes, the amino acids are the protein, the building blocks. So if we're not eating animal protein, which gives us all of the essential amino acids, we want to have a greater commitment to understanding the amino acid profile of different foods so that we make sure we are getting everything that the body needs. So this is another one you might want to screenshot there. And, I mentioned the omega-3s before, but incredible for mood and cognitive health. By the way, did you know a lot of your brain is fat and a lot of the brain is also DHA, so a specific type of omega-3. So even if you're taking an omega-3, take a look at the back of that bottle. We're actually looking for cognitive health and cardiovascular health. We're specifically looking for 3,000 to 6,000 milligrams or 3 to 6 grams of DHA and EPA. So take a look, make sure you're getting enough of the quality omega-3s that are going to move the needle for us. All right.
I just want one thing of just the orange juice. I wanted to mention the fact that there's high fructose corn syrup, which is already like too much. Just the fact that it's high fructose and the way they process it, that the liver can't handle it. So when you're talking about orange juice, you don't want to go crazy because it is 30 grams a lot of times, excuse me, of sugar. But you definitely want to understand that fructose itself processes in the liver, and it's a little different than the sugar that Jen was mentioning. So I would go with a small glass of orange juice, the way they do at the diner. They give you a little glass. That's plenty, but not to avoid some of these things because, it has too much sugar. You got to look at what kind of sugar. If it's fructose, then all those fruits have fructose. So that's not the danger that regular sugar is.
Yes, thank you. All right. Christine, our silver sneakers.
I'm sorry. I think I think that Arlene had her hand up for a question.
Oh, sorry.
Just a
Arlene,
quick question. So is eating an orange better than juice?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Because
Yes,
eating
absolutely.
the whole fruit. Yes,
Right.
exactly. Because eating the whole fruit gives us the fiber
Right,
that
exactly.
the juice does not.
Thank
Right.
you.
And also, if you can stand it, the white, that's, kind of like if you peel the orange and leave a lot of white on there, those are the bioflavonoids. Those are actually really good for you. So if you can stand, it's a little bitter, but if you can stand adding that into the orange, you're going to be strengthening all the walls of your blood vessels. And that's really important as we age. So we have here functional strength. So what's the difference between that and strength? And functional strength is things that you would actually do in the world. Are you strong enough to do those things? So including keeping your balance, including lifting things like groceries, vacuuming, things like that. When you look at in the gym, there's a lot of machines and things that you just wonder to yourself, when would I ever do that? That you're pulling down from the ceiling. And I don't know how many of us pull anything down from the ceiling. So when they talk about functional strength, it's to just make sure you're focused the most on that. Not to say you don't want to strengthen some of those other muscles, but if you have limited time or limited interest, just make sure it's things like, in terms of making sure that you can continue to walk, that you can climb stairs, anything that you do in your life that requires strength is why they call it functional strength.
And functional strength, I mean, think about the bodybuilders who like can't, raise
Yeah.
their arm above here, right? So it's about the strength to do the thing. So maybe what we're doing for our functional strength activity is taking that, thing of laundry detergent and putting it up on a top shelf and taking it back down, and doing that a couple times. Standing up and sitting down a few times from a chair, from the toilet, wherever. I often teach people what's called DWDS, which is drink water, do squats. So drinking water is naturally going to make us have to go to the ladies a little more often, right? When we go to the restroom, hold on to the sink, do 5 or 10 squats. Or sit down onto the toilet and stand up about 5 or 6 times. That's a squat, right? So we drink water, do squats. We can get this in our day without it taking extra time, without really having to uproot our lives. And it's those little things, that little bit of added movement and blood flow that makes such a tremendous difference in how we feel as we go about our day. And so that blood flow thing brings us to aerobic activities. So Christine, talk about slow twitch and then we'll do fast twitch.
Yeah, so the slow twitch, these are different fibers in the muscle. And each one of us is born with more slow twitch or more fast twitch. So you may have found that when someone talks about, running a 5K or something, or doing something where it's over a period of time, like going for a long bicycle ride, some people just shy away from that. And there's like, no way, I'm not, I'd be so out of breath, I can't do it. It's likely that they have been given more fast twitch fibers. Slow twitch is going the distance. So it could be, like anything that's longer than say 20 minutes. So that might be, these bicycles that are in the gym or just in gym or walking, that those slow twitch muscles will support you throughout the whole. You're not going to, by the end of it, feel like you have to collapse when you get home. You're still going to feel pretty good. And then we can go to the fast twitch is the next one. And so that's like when you have either strength or sprinting. And so for some people, it's just kind of organic. It's genetic. It's that they are able to become strong very quickly. And so when you are lifting things, that it's always been easy for you to lift boxes. Oh, let me do it. You'll see someone else who's kind of not able to do those things, although they might be able to go out and run a marathon because they have plenty of slow twitch fibers, but you're the one that's able to lift all the boxes. So it just depends. And then the sprinting is anything that's really fast, again, fast twitch muscles. So we're going to talk about what nutrition each one of these needs.
You're going to talk about it now, aren't we?
I am going to talk about it. Oh, right. Don't we have a slide?
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay.
No, it was kind of in there. It was in each one. So let's go back to the slow twitch. So with endurance, right, we're thinking complex carbohydrates before. So complex carbohydrates are those that have more fiber, right? The whole foods. During that exercise, in order to keep going, so what you might think of as intra workout fuel. So marathon runners have goo, right? Or things that they have. So during that workout, we're using more of the simple carbohydrates to get that fuel to our muscles very quickly. And then after, we're looking more for quality fat, that nutrition to support before, during, and after that sort of endurance training. Right? And this is a bit different than what we're thinking of for that fast twitch nutrition, right? That fast twitch training. So there, before we train, we're actually looking for those simple carbohydrates to get fuel to our muscles quickly. So one of my favorite things is 2 dates. So 2 dates before a workout can give us that fast fuel to the muscle. And then we want to support with plenty of protein to rebuild those muscle fibers. So this is where somebody might look at branched chain amino acids, super high quality whey protein isolate. Even creatine is, sometimes controversial, but more and more we're seeing how beneficial it can be for that muscle repair. And then even over time, supporting some of that endurance. So we can see how, depending on what our activity is, how we want to fuel that before, during, and after.
Yeah. And going back to the mood, it's like, why are we even talking about all this when it comes to mood? But again, with movement, it's like your body just naturally, organically is kind of craving this idea of getting the circulation going, getting all the toxins released from your body, creating all the different neurotransmitters, all the things that we've been talking about early on, that even processing your food, it just goes better, you maybe don't want to exercise right after a big meal, but to be able to take advantage of all that actually, does change your mood. So, as much as we think we're kind of stuck with our own thoughts and our own, especially the mood more than the emotions, this kind of thing that kind of permeates everything that we're doing. You can slowly feel that, like, okay, I'm starting to come around the bend here, that I'm able to look forward to things, maybe a visit with a friend, all the things we talked about, writing in your journal, you can look and see, oh, I'm starting to feel a little bit better, because it is slow and gradual in terms of improving your mood. But it's been studied, and we've experienced it ourselves, to be able to, like, I know with some of the aerobics, if you're on a bicycle or, even if you're not going full out, there's this little bit of a giddy feeling to it, that you start, and it doesn't happen right away, but after about 10 minutes, you start feeling a little bit more childlike. And I think it's related to our play when we were kids, and some of those memories come back. So that's how it works. So just to make that connection.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure today to have plenty of time for Q&A. So we can open it up, whether you want to put it in the chat or unmute and ask your question. And the other thing, just like last time, you can scan that QR code. If you have something specific going on or personal questions that you want to ask, you can use that QR code, that link, to schedule 15 minutes, and Christine or I can be in touch with you to really help you target what's happening for you.